I call this Altoona City Council work session to order, Monday, October 25th, 2021. Now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if there's any public comment, you may dial the number on the screen. When prompted to, please give your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing none, we will close the floor for public comment and move into the first discussion item of the evening, the 2022 proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to pick up where we left off at the last meeting, and that was a review of the budget. As I recall at the time, the only real question that came up was related to the additional monetary request from the CBRC. And so we, after a further review, so to speak, we were able to include that in these recommendations for ARPA. And that's the next item on the agenda. Beyond that, if you have any other questions or anything that you wanted to discuss, we certainly can do that right now.
Does anybody have any additional budget discussion? All right, if not, we'll move on to ARPA fund recommendations.
Okay, so despite the fact that we're 2 months from Christmas, the document I handed out to you looks more like an Easter egg with the various colors and the shape. But
How are you in these colors? When you're
He's
colorblind,
colorblind.
it makes it challenging.
well, really, beyond the far left-hand column is just a listing of the uses, the eligible use. The next 3 columns are just the current year. I should say the next 4 columns are the current year, next year, 2023 and 2024. And then the far right-hand column is just a description of that particular line item. This is all one page for the recommendations that I have here. But I also included the funding requests, which we had reviewed at the prior meeting. I didn't know if anybody wanted to talk about that. Some of those are included here, some of them are not. But I would just go down through this here with you all and open it up for discussion. So you look at the top of the page, it's really bisected with a gray line running horizontally across it. You notice that on the left-hand column, all that is kind of in italics. Above the line, below the line, it's not in italics. The items above the line are really city-related costs and or component units requests, and then below that line are items for outside of the city's actual operations. So I can go down through this from starting at the top. That first item is listed as a COVID-19 loss. So beginning on March the 3rd of this year, we, as a city, were able to recoup the costs, payroll costs and benefit costs associated with folks that were missing work because of COVID-19. And this number's a bit old as I think about it now. There may be some additional costs that will go into this year. But the out years, 22 through 24, we would expect a diminishing amount, and I've only included about $17,500 in out year costs related to that. The next item down is workforce reconstitution, and we talked a lot about that at the last budget meeting, and the fact that we are going to reconstitute a portion of the workforce, specifically in the police department, the fire department, and public works, that we lost due to the reduction in force that resulted largely from the onset of the pandemic. So those costs are listed for each year. And of course, they are only estimates because we don't know the final costs at this point. Below that, you'll see IT software and hardware. This is specifically IT related and designated for cybersecurity and public access purposes, which again are eligible uses. The next item down is the City Hall fourth floor multi-use area. That's on the fourth floor of City Hall, and it is something that council had approved the costs of at the last council meeting, a $75,000 estimate. That should be done by year end. Next item down then would be the Margaret Avenue facility upgrade. I have $500,000 there in next year, and that is really something that would allow the city to have a much needed venue for citywide training if we so decide to go in that route. It'll take a little bit of money to get it up to speed, but certainly it can be used for that purpose, and that money is there for that purpose. The next item down is a highway garage facility upgrade. Next year, $250,000. The purpose for the upgrade is really to upgrade a building that hasn't been pretty much touched since the 1980s, and really to expand some of the common areas. And the idea is that we would ensure social distancing and improved ventilation through that upgrade. The item right below that then would be the police building expansion. This is a $3 million project that would start next year, and according to this would be done, or hopefully be done by the end of the following year. It's an expansion of the police building onto the parcel at 1500 11th Avenue. Then the last item above the line is the parking authority revenue loss. The director of the parking authority, Pat Miller, had supplied that number to me earlier this year, $34,250, which would replace lost revenue to the parking authority based on a comparison of last year to the prior year, 2019. So those are all the in-house, so to speak, uses of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Do we want to talk about that before I move on, or is there any just want me to keep going.
I mean, these are subject to change. I mean,
Yeah, they're not in stone, and of course, they're only estimates of costs too, so.
yeah.
The $20,000 GADAC, I mean, that just seems like an awful small amount. If I'm understanding
Yeah, so
the
for,
purpose of that.
I'll move
Okay.
on to that.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, it is. It was just another request from GADAC because they are running out of money. I mean, the money, they used to get, contributions from businesses in town. Again, Pat Miller's involved in that. He said, you know, he's considering reinstituting that. They really don't want to do that because it's money that, of course, most businesses don't have to pay. It is an eligible expense under ARPA, and he requested that from the city, and it's included here.
Okay, all right, so that's actual operating expense for GADAC.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because when I saw business downturn, okay, I thought that was something for them to administer to businesses.
No, it's
Okay.
just to keep them moving, going forward. The next item listed here then would be the ABCD revolving loan fund, the Altoona Blair County Development Corporation revolving loan fund. That puts out, $4 million into a fund that would, encourage and support business development and business-related, loans for programs, a loan program or programs, so, by the way, I've talked with, Steve McKnight, preliminarily about, Altoona Blair County Development Corporation supporting the city in, providing support for some of these items that I'm now gonna list, because we don't have that, really that capability in-house. We're gonna need them. He has, told me that he is willing to make sure that happens, so. That would be a key. It has their name right on it. The revolving loan fund would flow right through, ABCD Corp. The
Would-
next,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So would we have any input in establishing that loan fund and the criteria for it? Or would we leave that entirely up to them?
I would say you could have as much input as you want, or
I mean,
as little.
everybody's always giving us money with strings attached. I'm just, dictating the repayment, the length of term, the interest rate, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
want
I-
to set those parameters, we could. If
Mhm.
you wanted to kind of just give broad parameters to them to administer it, I think you could do that as well. I'm sorry, Mayor.
It's okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say that to Bruce, that, yeah, we would definitely have a role in setting all of that.
Yeah, I mean, because that's your $4 million you're speculating possibility there, so, okay.
And
Yeah.
that's something I would think that may come up in the form of a resolution or something. Or I don't know if that would be resolution or ordinance, I guess, Al.
Well, then maybe that's a good time to ask this question now, because you've got amounts spread out over a 1, 2, 3, 4-year period.
Correct.
So how will we, for sake of conversation, let's say we ran completely with this list the way it looks now. How would we allocate that money? Is that going to take an act of ordinance, or is it just resolution, or how does that, what are the mechanics on that?
Well, this is all brand new substance as far as all this money flooding our way. At this point, I'd probably be looking, doing some more research on that specific issue. I mean, my thought is by resolution if possible, because that'd be the simplest way to do. But I would certainly, once we know which way we're going with this stuff, probably look into it a little more deeply. So.
Okay. Because if we did it with an ordinance, it would have to be introduced.
Correct.
It would have to lay over.
Correct.
And I also think that gives public the opportunity for more comment.
Sure.
you know, rather than just doing a resolution, which would be a once and done, so, okay.
Yeah,
And
so,
similar to the resolution we recently passed for stormwater for the upfront.
Right.
yeah, so it's spread out because my assumption in putting those numbers across the years, and again, it's fluid, but, if you, instead of putting, $4 million right away, I just don't know that they would ever be able to put that on the street. So but we're saying really here that that's what we're identifying for them to use. And if it was needed, and I guess that we would be, if there was enough development that would need that much in terms of, monies from the fund, we could make it available. The next item is in relation to the issue that came up when we went through the budget related to the Central Blair Recreation Commission. I met with Mike Hofer and talked to him about that additional $50,000 amount that he requested, and asked him if he could designate that for use for outdoor facilities and programs within the budget structure that he has, and he said he absolutely can, and so that, therefore, we've offloaded it from the budget and put it into this ARPA recommendation. The next item is city sidewalks. So this would be multi-year program designed to replace and enhance sidewalks to facilitate movement of people in outdoor spaces. And I really think, the more I looked at that and the more I studied some of the materials, I think that it fits the criteria, and we all know how much we need sidewalk repair and improvement in the city. So I think that $2 million designated for city sidewalks, it's something that I think would be valuable to the city and to the citizens. The next item I have here listed is the money towards the city's land bank. So, recently, the redevelopment authority had a meeting for the first time in about 8 months, I believe. And during the meeting, we had a discussion. I sat in on the meeting, and the discussion included some talk about this, the land bank and some money available for the land bank, which is, of course, under the auspices of the redevelopment authority, and their ability to purchase and redevelopment property within the city. I have a lot of, I have like $2 million this year, so if you guys are good with that, we can move and kind of push that money off to the redevelopment authority for use as a land bank so that they can begin that process. I did not put money in next year, thinking that it would take them a good while to, work their way through that first 2 million. But then the subsequent payment would be in 2023 of $1 million. The next item I have listed is business district revitalization. So this is a little bit, it's related to, of course, the revolving loan and program, but it would provide grants and loans to businesses that are committed to economic development within a prescribed business district or districts. So I know the downtown is a business district in the city. It's a designated business district. I believe the Altoona Blair County Development Corporation had designated another area back prior to the pandemic that I think this would be eligible for as well. And I think frankly, if council so chose, they could designate any area within the city as a business revitalization district.
For the sake of keeping it broad, or can we just make the boundary Logan Township and Allegheny Township? That
Um,
gives us all the flexibility.
I don't know. I
Come on,
would have
Tom.
to do a little.
Tom, tell them we can.
Well, I think if you're gonna designate something, you know, as a, you know, for business district revitalization, I think you have to be able to establish that there's some nexus between business activity and the district you're creating,
Right.
so.
I mean, so what about when we expanded the LERTA zone a while back? I mean, could the LERTA zone, I mean, that covers a pretty wide swath through the city,
Yeah, I believe it does.
you know, and is that, we're not deciding this tonight, but
Sure.
I just throw that out there for consideration, is that, and I agree with what, you know, what David is saying, is, you know, you want to have something that, you know, we don't get boxed in on, that,
Yeah.
Right.
oh, you're just over the line, and we want to have something that's broad. But
I think with anything like with LERTA, it's just so long as, you know, any areas you're including fit the criteria for which they're anticipating those types of, you know, credits to be utilized. I don't see why you couldn't, as long as you're, you know, meeting that criteria.
And I guess another thing, I'd like to see it non-contiguous. And the reasoning for that is, for instance, the development going on from Green Bean to Green Bean. You know, you got Green Bean Grand Palazzo and then Green Bean by the 7th 8th Street bridges there. Plus also...
Plus you'll have a new green bean there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And also save for Juniata Business
But I-
District there too.
But I see, that's why I mentioned the LERTA zone, because that
Yeah.
went down through Juniata and Chestnut Avenue, and I think 764, and,
Yeah.
I think I think going by the LERTA map will be good for that. That encompasses a pretty good swath of the city where there is
that's
heavy
both,
business presence. I
both
guess.
sides of the Hollidaysburg branch line, as I recall,
Mhm.
you know, that 764. But I think that also the LERTA also took in like Broad and Beale Avenue too, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. So, yeah, so I think it's worth dragging that map out and taking a look at it before we make a final decision. And then, I mean, is that just investment? Is that,
Yeah,
or
again,
is it just keeping it broad?
this would have to be something, again, that the ABCD Corp would be involved in. And, you know, you would have to, I believe, designate certain business districts if you're just gonna say it's the LERTA zone. I don't see a problem with that. You might not wanna just hold yourself to that completely. I don't believe that touches, say, on the Pleasant Valley area, which is, you know, or anywhere that may also be designated for business development. But I saw it more as grant money. I have loans here too, but I mean, we have a loan program. So this would be kind of like, you put your business plan together, if you don't have one. I would think it would be primarily geared towards small businesses, because you know, those are the driving force for most economic development. I mean, obviously, a major employer may qualify, but, you know, we're looking, I would think we're looking to try to develop small business within the city.
Yeah, and I just don't want to have council give up its ability to make decisions and award some of this money and giving it to a third party completely. I mean, that's why I asked about establishing the criteria for, you know, the loan fund, and, you know, that's going through, you know, you have that set up for ABCD. We're giving GateX some operational money, and business district revitalization, I mean,
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But I would
I
at
think-
least want a resolution at the very least, because then that gives the public opportunity to see it, comment, and then we'd have to take an official vote on it.
I would think we could make anything
Yeah.
you know, contingent upon council approval.
and I get it. I think from a staff standpoint, they may be geared better to help handle some of the administrative end of this, but I just, you know, don't want to give up all the decision-making ability to somebody else. When, I mean, we're accountable to the people,
Yep.
so.
Well, I think one of the other, kind of following along with that, one of the other factors to take into consideration too is at some point being able to, you know, account for where all the money went, and not just where it went, but for what purpose.
Yes.
You know, in case at some point in time.
We're the ones on the hook.
Right, you're right,
Yeah,
exactly.
we're the one,
So,
and please, I am not taking a swat at ABCD or GADAC or anything like that, but this is once in a lifetime opportunity. And again, we're the ones, the 7 of us that sit up here are accountable to the people of Altoona. And I think that we should, you know, have the opportunity to weigh in and help make some of these decisions.
Yep. When
You
we're
know,
in
and
line for our MTO,
I'm all
may be
about
getting cooked, but
input
we're
and
getting
providing
grilled.
input to us, and if they want to help with the administration of some of this, that's fine too, but I just don't want to give everything up to a third party.
Yep, indeed. Like I was saying, when we're in line for our MTO, it may be getting cooked, but we're the ones getting grilled while we're waiting.
So,
I have no idea what you just said, but that's okay.
I'm not confident I understand. just nod your head.
We're the ones getting asked the questions about stuff while we're
Oh,
waiting
okay,
for
yeah.
our lunch.
Yes, ultimately, I mean, we have the responsibility, when it's all said and done, we still have the responsibility. And so I think we should be involved in that decision-making.
yeah, and
Okay.
it's your money, you have the authority.
It's
so
not
any-
my money, it's the
Well, I
taxpayers'
mean,
money.
it's council's money.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make the decisions, on these things, so,
Okay.
Yeah, I think
we-
our whole goal in partnering with the development corporation on this is we don't have the resources at the municipal level to handle this, and I think it provides an opportunity to, you know, pull some of their skills and expertise from an economic development standpoint while we kind of help set the rules and the roadmap for these dollars.
And we're dealing with taxpayer money through the federal government. So I could absolutely see them coming back in 2024, 2025 and saying, hey, we want to see your audit for all your COVID money.
They'll do that more frequently than that
Yeah.
every year.
Do we also have to turn over every $600 transaction that we have to do?
Undetermined yet.
no, but we do have, you know, reporting requirements that we have to
Yeah.
meet and defend, of course. So, the next item I had listed here, it's just a fairly small item. It's a grant match for the mill project for a grant for co-working space. We were requested to be a participant in that, so it is here. I've included it in these recommended uses. The next item listed is under recreation, so this really puts $3 million in the next couple of years into recreation within the community. And those funds would be designed to upgrade and enhance facilities designed to provide recreational opportunities. Nate and I met with Mike Hofer and talked about Prospect Pool, for example. So a lot of money, if we decide to do anything with that pool, it could take a lot of money to get it up and running or even relocate it. We talked about the relocation of it too. So I think it allows us to, you know, think big. As we said, it's one-time money, but it's going to cost a lot of money. So there's at least some of that money in there, in my mind at least, for recreation would be related to that pool or some aquatic facility at or around that area. So the next item here is the big money item, so to speak, and that's storm sewer renovation. So there's about $14 million in storm sewer renovation. I included the $4 million we just approved for this year, and, you know, spread it out over the next 3 years. And those would be for projects that are currently under review and at costs that are yet to be determined. we all talked about this before, and I believe everybody was on board with designating a nice chunk of money to addressing some of the storm sewer renovation issues that we have.
I don't know if there's an award for like Mr. Stormwater, but Nate's gonna be up for it.
I wasn't aware of any award.
I didn't say you wanted it. I just said, unfortunately, you're getting really good at it.
Then the last item I have here is really just a balancing item. It's money that's sitting there to be designated for other purposes as we go forward, about $2,100,000.
And some of these, I could see us getting other grants, depending on how things go too. We don't want to take our foot off the pedal for what's out there in some of the existing programs also.
Yeah, we absolutely want to leverage this money with other money that's out there.
And like the mayor's worked with the League of Cities and the National League, you've been able to find some really good stuff through that too.
So, those are recommendations from me. I think I was asked at the last meeting to put something together for you folks. Obviously it's not in stone. I am gonna say that the items at the top of the page, I really wanna see, all or most of those things happen, and then as we go down the page, they become a little bit, less solid in my mind. Money can be moved from one category to another. These are just broad categories. I think we need to get once we make those decisions, we can decide on the administrative process and the decision-making process.
Do we want to vote on everything? So like when we vote on this, are we going to vote on spending the entire 39,600,000 at once, or are we going to do it 2 years and then 2 years? Because if we tie ourselves to decisions now that, priorities could change by 2024,
I think we'd want to have some flexibility, Mayor.
Absolutely.
I mean, I
was gonna
really
say, I
do.
think
And
they
I
could
think-
change by 2022.
Yeah.
So even
Yeah.
just approving the 2021,
And there is always the possibility that there could be other federal monies that end up coming our way that could change, infrastructure, and so, I think we'd want to have some flexibility and not make a total commitment at one time.
It's a good guide though. Good job.
Omar, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the easiest thing in the world is to be a critic, but it's much harder to do, and thank you for putting pen to paper and giving us a bit of a roadmap here to get started with. Thank you.
it was
So would
clearly
council,
a lot of work.
thank you for your feedback, but would council want to take some formal action at the next meeting? Is that what we're looking at, or something before the end of the year? Or,
Well, you've got some
You-
things here that are slated for 2021 already, so I think, we're running out of
Yeah.
2021 at this point.
And these dollars that are in the 2022 category for the city side, I'm guessing would probably be part of the budget that we
they're in the
got
budget. Yeah.
introduced to last week. Okay.
Well, we already did the stormwater for 2021. It appears here.
Yeah,
City Land Bank. Anybody? Mayor, are you on the redevelopment authority?
Yes,
So you guys already talked about that.
we did. Yeah, we talked about it Monday a little bit. Yeah. We're gonna start, we're gonna look to work with Winnie again, since she's kind of the land bank expert, in Pennsylvania, to have her help us navigate this.
And she's also one of the blight experts,
Mhm.
which goes hand in hand. So land bank, blight, remediation goes hand in hand here. And so we're gonna looks like we're gonna have a good opportunity with the redevelopment authority to, really put a good fighting to Blight.
Yes, sir.
So should we see if there's any objection to anything in the 2021 and then plan on approving that at the next meeting?
Yeah, the only thing that I don't see specifically in Omar, maybe it's to be folded into something else, but the one thing that there has been discussion about, and particularly from the business community and economic development side, is expansion of broadband. And I don't see anything specifically, or is there something in here that could help address that I'm missing?
Well, we have a miscellaneous area here. If you wanted to, put some money towards broadband, we could pull it out of there. Or you could scale back any of these categories. I mean, there's nothing written in stone until we, formalize it.
I'd like to get a better grasp of that before making a decision. Like, we already have Atlantic broadband that covers the city, and so would we be, if we use money for broadband, would we be doing that in direct conflict with our franchise agreement? I'd like to sort of be able to wrap my mind around exactly how we're gonna handle that.
Our franchise agreement involves cable and the public right-of-way. It doesn't involve broadband.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step in. I've been
No, it's
involved
No,
in
no,
it for a
you've
number of
been
years.
dealing with that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I just don't really know what are we investing in. You know what I mean? Like
And
we
is
got a proposal a couple of months ago, but we never really got any follow up from that. Not that I've seen, anyways.
And I'm not aware of any of the other municipalities participating. I mean, just speaking out loud, I'm not sure if they've
Okay.
been able to form like a memorandum of understanding or some kind of cooperation effort on that.
I know it's a bigger deal in the townships and countywide decision-making process because you're dealing with areas that don't have any internet access or access to broadband at all. But for the city, we're sort of a little bit different in that category.
And I do think breaking it down into chunks allows us the flexibility to look at the broadband issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like just
Okay.
approving this $7,069,645 still leaves plenty of room to,
Wiggle room.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, so we'll plan to have a resolution on at the next meeting for adoption of the 2021 amounts. And go from there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Omar. All right, move on to the student housing ordinance amendments.
Okay, as everyone will recall, at the last work session, there was discussion relative to a request from several landlords in the city relative to concern with student housing that presently is vacant due to decreased numbers at Penn State Altoona. And, I was tasked to look to see, what potential relief we could look at in that regard. I researched the existing ordinance and also consulted with Attorney Bill Stoke, and he's a solicitor for the Zoning Hearing Board. And we mutually agreed our concern as to how you amend the ordinance is not creating an issue for potential challenge for spot zoning. And in that regard, kind of what as a result of that collaborative effort, we came up with the idea that the right now the student housing is permitted in the various zoning sections within the city as long as you meet certain criteria. And one of the factors is no other student home within a certain radius, depending upon what type of zone that particular area is. Kind of the thought we came up with was amend the ordinance to provide that if the special exception has expired because of, it hasn't been used for that 12-month period, to basically provide a mechanism by which they could get renewal for the special exception so long as no other student home has moved within that specific area, like within that radius, okay, that's designated in the zone. We felt that that would kind of avoid the whole spot zoning issue, as far as we're not changing the exception period for student homes versus other special exceptions that may apply. And, this is coming about because of a insufficient number of students who need housing. So, as long as that continues, we wouldn't anticipate other student homes springing up in the interim, because if there's just not the demand for it right now, why would, so
Well-
that's what, I provided a draft of the proposed amendments, for you folks to consider, so that's.
So what if, so you're saying then if a student home reverted to a regular rental, somebody else could come and apply for a variance for another student home, which would knock out that first one?
What,
Is that what you're saying?
I mean, is that a potential, that's a potential, like,
Because I was gonna suggest, like, what if the student home that is now acting as a regular rental is, has a flag or a pin in it in the system that whenever somebody tries to look as a student rental, even though it's not being used as a student rental, it still shows up as a student rental, and that would avoid any new student rentals from being approved within the 300 feet around that one.
I guess the concern we had was basically in order to do that, you would have to take this particular special exception and give it basically special treatment as it compared to other special exceptions within the zoning code. Because like right now, it's like these special exceptions, they deal with like a 12-month window. Like if you go 12 months without using it, it's gone. And student homes are included in that. So it's not, the concern was if you say, okay, all other special exceptions, it's 12 months, except for student housing, and I'll just pick, it's 24 months or it's 36 months. Our concern was, does that raise a potential spot zoning challenge? I understand exactly what you're saying. The thought, the thought behind this mechanism was, if the reason right now you don't have, like, this house isn't filled with students because there just is insufficient demand at this point in time. Yeah, is it possible someone else, if that exception expires, says, okay, now I got a student home here, if this is all because of a lack of students, it would seem you wouldn't have the demand for someone to run in to get the student housing. Or maybe I'm not explaining that correctly.
Well, so I have the way that it's proposed or
Yes.
written, if I have this special exemption and I, like, my home is a student rental, right, but I haven't had any students for 12 months. My question is, it maintains the possibility to re-up the rental?
Yeah, the way it would work is if I've gone more than 12 months without students in that house, upon application, the only thing I have to establish is that there is another student house within whatever radius is designated in that specific zone, then the special exception's renewed.
So saying it has been 12 months, right? And then on the 13th month, my neighbor has a prospective student rental across the street, and they go through the process. In my opinion, they should be allowed to at that point. My question is, does the way that it's written allow that person
The new
to turn their property into a student rental at that point?
Theoretically, yes,
On
it
the
would.
13th month.
It would.
Okay.
It
So you
would.
could technically knock somebody out of the student housing.
You
But
could.
that allows, I mean,
I guess, yeah, and
But that doesn't help the people that are having the issue now, like our student landlords. And if they have even a slim chance of losing one of their student licenses, they're not even going to go after this exception.
I guess my the only other scenario, that realistically could look at is basically providing the special treatment for a student home exception. My concern is a challenge on the spot zoning.
and also should people be able to, for
Yeah.
indefinitely maintain that
That's,
that
That's
and
the other side of
exclude the possibility of their neighbor being allowed to do the same thing. Like,
That's the other
Ooh,
side of it.
Now you have a situation, somebody will get a student rental and rent it regularly just to keep student rentals within 300 feet.
I guess one of the aspects, what's driving this right now is you just gotta, at least as I understand, is a shortage of students.
Yeah.
There just isn't the demand for the student housing. So, Councilman Carper, yeah, you bring up, could someone come in, get the exception, to knock someone out? They could. I guess it's, if the demand isn't there now, I'm not sure how much business and financial sense that would make to get an exception for something that there's no demand for at the moment.
I agree with you.
That's-
My concern is, I guess, like the exclusivity of it all, like being able to indefinitely put a hold so that none of my neighbors can do the thing that I want to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that to me presents a fundamental issue.
Oh, yeah.
I think this could open up an issue though with people applying for student homes in neighborhoods where the surrounding neighbors don't want them, you know what I mean? Because one happened to open up because the guy down the street who had it as a student rental for the last 12 years decided to take on regular
Right.
rental, you know?
I mean, yeah, no matter which way you look at this, there's potential downsides to every aspect of it. I guess, the proposed change would be if my special exception has expired, okay, to get it back, I only have to establish one thing. As opposed to, I'm going to get it for the first time and I gotta hit all the criteria, okay? So it's a bit of a streamlined process. It would limit the issues in dispute at that point. Is it absolutely foolproof where, geez, I have this thing now and this exception now and I will have it for as long as I want it? No, it doesn't. But I guess the concern, as I mentioned before, is, to really do that, you almost have to extend the period of time of beyond 12 months. And you're doing that for one particular exception and not all, and so, could that lead, does that lead to a challenge of like, well, I have a special exception for, and I'm just like, I'm operating a small business in a residential neighborhood. I have an exception for that. Why shouldn't my exception be more than 12 months? I mean, I'm just,
What if our student housing ordinance just allowed people to use a student home as a regular property, like, switch back and forth
does,
between the two?
right?
well, okay,
No.
because right now, it's like if you look at the zoning ordinance that it contains relative to the student housing, it allows the student homes in the various districts, and it has the radius depends on the nature of the district. So,
No, I mean,
Can
what if
you-
our ordinance allowed for, like, say you have a student home that's registered as a student home, those people could rent to regular non-students as well without losing their student housing ordinance. Are there some municipalities with student housing ordinances that are written that way? Because I for some reason, I thought Logan Township
I
was
thought
that way.
Logan's was.
I think Logan Township,
Yeah.
a student house can rent to a regular rental and not lose their student housing designation.
when I looked at our code, it's all intertwined within the zoning ordinance, is the way it is. And student homes are defined within that ordinance. It's basically listed as an exception in these various districts. That's how it is in our ordinance. So I think if you're gonna now try to, pull that out of, the entire zoning ordinance, you're basically gonna be rewriting the zoning, aspects of the zoning ordinance as well.
So I would say that I like the way that you've presented it. I like the idea of the streamlining the process for current student renters, should they not be able to maintain a student for 12 months, I like the way that it's written. I would say that I think for me personally, there's like, I don't like the prospect of like being able to say, well, I had a student rental first, right? So none of my neighbors can have that, even if I don't
Yeah.
rent to students for 3-4 years, like it doesn't matter. I had the student rental first.
it's mine. I don't like that personally. I like the way that you've presented it in saying, yeah, as long as nobody else has acquired a student rental in the meantime, let's streamline the process for you to get your student rental. That personally is.
I guess my concern is the same as always. How does the law of unintended consequences apply here?
And that's one of my concerns.
Yeah.
And that's when, when I was reviewing it, and I raised that issue, like I said, with the solicitor, the zoning hearing board, about
Yeah.
the spot zoning thing, that was both a similar concern we both
He
had.
does a great job on there, so you did a good job going to him with that.
So
too.
that's why I say there's no silver bullet easy answer to the issue.
What I'm thinking is, first of all, when would we be introducing this? Possibly at the next meeting? The November meeting? Or was this something we were going to do later?
Well, I mean, I would like to take this to the landlords that asked for it
Well,
in the first place.
that
to
was
get
the
their
next thing I was
feedback.
going to say. If we
'Cause-
introduce this, I want to encourage the landlord association. I want to encourage some student to come to the meeting or however, or we put it on a future work session like in January or something and meet with the landlord folks and some of the student housing rental folks.
As I understand it, and Rebecca, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is an issue that's kind of arisen with this particular school year.
Yeah.
So they're, theoretically, if, they haven't rented to students since last spring, there is time. And yeah, I'd have no problem, reaching out to other groups like, hey, what do you think of this? If they have, other ideas, I'd be happy to listen to them.
Yeah, that's who I'd like to hear
Yeah.
from. And I've been to the landlord association meetings on other stuff. But this would be a good time to hear from them.
I would just bear in mind that, student housing is somewhat cyclical, so
Yes.
kids come in the late summer, before the semester, and they leave, and then there's another semester that'll begin at the beginning of the year. And once you miss that, you're probably out until the beginning of the next
Till
semester.
fall.
But the reality is that the enrollment at Penn State Altoona has been declining.
And the forecast is not optimistic.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's all necessarily because of COVID.
Yeah, I would agree with
I
that.
mean, and that's been a trend across a lot of the other Commonwealth campuses, is they've lowered that to keep 40,000 students, undergrads at University Park.
And that's why when we were looking at this, it was, the possibility of someone else coming in to get I want the student housing exception, but I guess if the demand's not there.
Sure, law of economics would say that it's not, it's not a market to be in.
Exactly. So that was the thought process.
Okay, anything else on that?
Well, I would say we're not ready to move forward on this, that's for sure.
I would
I
rather
mean-
wait and do it right
No.
the
Yeah.
first time
I
than do
agree.
something now and then have something
Well,
happen.
look, I think the concerns are from landlords, if I have a house that's designated a student house, just make sure that I understand this, that with with COVID, with the downturn in enrollment, I haven't been able to rent as a student house, but I don't want to lose that designation. I'd like to be able to rent it to somebody else so I can continue an income stream and be able to maintain the house and keep it up. But I'd still like to be able to keep the student house designation, so.
Well, I think right now, the way it's written is, I have to go 12 months not renting to a student before I lose this special exception. So it does, you could rent it for some segment of that 12 months to a non-student, and then if you're renting again to a student, you're still within the 12 months. So I don't think the current language of the ordinance would prohibit you from ever renting to a non-student. The issue comes in if I don't rent to a student for
12
12
months, consecutive months, it's gone.
Yeah,
And that's their concern.
and I get that. And I
Right.
guess, there is a process, like if I want to get the student housing to begin with, it's not just there's no other student home within this radius, there's these other hurdles I gotta meet and jump through. I guess this amendment would, in that instance, would eliminate those other ones and just be, is there any other student home within that radius? So it's a little more streamlined, but, can I sit here and tell you it's absolutely perfect for what they're looking for? I'm sure they'd have concerns about it, but I have concerns on, like you were saying, Vice Mayor Boderball, is like the unintended consequences. And, I'm just concerned if you amend it in such a way to tailor it for this specific use, do you open yourself up for other challenges relative to other special exceptions? That's my concern.
Yeah.
And that was a similar concern with Attorney Stoken.
So, I did not hear, can you rent to a non-student if it's designated as a student rental?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like I said,
So
the
that-
tricky part, like I said, once you go beyond 12 months, you haven't rented to a student, then the special exception's gone.
can they, okay, so does the special exemption, is it just for the student portion of the rental, or is it the rental period?
It's for the students.
Okay,
And I mean, I guess thinking ahead, or maybe just thinking completely differently, you could change the makeup of the student home regulation in the zoning ordinance right now. Because right now it's tied to a special exception. So the only way you can, get that designation is by special exception. And special exceptions have that 12 months attached to them. So you could remove it from the special exception designation. I don't know. It's something you could think about.
I guess my next question is, how is student defined, or is it defined at all? Full-time student? Are we talking full-time, part-time?
Well, there's a definition in the code for a student home.
There is.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's in the zoning code.
So you can't just as a landlord say, hey, Ethel, I'm
Correct.
signing you up for a continuing education class on basket weaving.
Correct.
We're all
Correct.
we're all
Okay.
we're all
Yeah.
students in life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a student.
lifelong learners.
Yeah. So,
I guess I have some challenges relating to if I'm a landlord and I don't have my student home rented and I get this exception and I have a tenant and in 12 months I lose my student housing ability, but I still have the tenant. There's still money coming in to offset my operating costs. I mean, we can't guarantee people's survival in changing markets. I mean, it's the reality of it. And I don't want to say that in a cavalier manner, but a lot of people's cheese has been moved in the last 20 months.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I have a full understanding of exactly how the current ordinance works, right?
Yeah.
So let's say Jesse or Councilman Ickes has a student rental, right? And 6 months goes by, he can't get a student, so he rents it to, he is within his rights to rent it to whomever he wants at that point, right?
correct.
Another 6 months goes by. That renter's not a student. He loses the student rental designation, but that renter, like you're still a landlord for
Yeah.
that, for the current tenant, right?
Yeah.
You don't lose any kind of rental income. There's no day that comes that all of a sudden you're no longer.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, as Rebecca said, the way the zoning ordinance is written now, it has all these, depending upon what part of the city you are, it's like designated a certain type of zone. Student housing is basically an exception in all these zones, with other special exceptions. And the 12-month rule applies to these special exceptions.
Well, hopefully between now and the next meeting, we find out if we have to do something or not. Because for some of these guys, the 12 months may be getting close already.
Okay. Anything else for that?
I hope
I don't know that we did anything, but.
We had a lively debate. Thank you.
No, I'd rather discuss it and get it right than just move ahead and then something come up.
All right, moving on to business privilege tax
Okay.
ordinance.
Yes, after the last work session, I did look into this, and I also spoke with the folks over at Berkheimer who collect this tax on behalf of the city, and I alluded to this during our last work session. One of the concerns I have is, these types of taxes and ordinances relative to are all grandfathered in the late '80s. I mean, you can't do that. You can't initiate a new ordinance right now. They're concerned with, amending the ordinance, do you open up to a challenge to the validity of the ordinance, things of that nature. And, I spoke with those folks, and one of the things, thought of, and they seem to think was a good idea, is, in our code, we have provisions, basically called editor's notes. Like, you go in, it's kind of like what you see in statutes too. It'll have like comments to the it's basically like you have all this legalese. Well, here in plain person's language, this is what it means, okay? And this is how it works. So I kind of threw out the idea of what if we had an editor's note in our code that basically explains how this works, because based upon the last meeting, the issue wasn't how the tax is being applied, it's that people just misunderstand how it's being applied. So putting in like an editor's note in the code so that it'd be there easily for people to see, hey, here's how it's applied, to kind of alleviate that confusion. That was the thought process behind it. Mr. Hunt at Berkheimer thought that was a good idea as well. I did send a draft of the editor's note because they wanted, their their in-house legal to look at it as well. So that's what I understood the goal to be, was to try to, not how it was applied, but basically to make people understand how it's applied, so to avoid confusion, which is adverse to, city business climate.
Would that also, I assume it can, but just asking for clarification, would that also be able to be applied to the mercantile
Certainly,
ordinance as well?
certainly,
Because that has the same
Right.
language.
right. So I did send that out to those folks. I've not received formal commentary from them yet. And like I said, it really is, we're not, if we go with the editor's note, it's really not necessarily an amendment to the ordinance itself. It's kind of an explanatory comment.
Can we do that via like a resolution?
Yes,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay.
So between now and November, as long as we hear back from somebody over at ABCD or whatever, we can.
Well, yeah, like I said, as soon as I hear back, because like Berkheimer, they wanted to review it, my proposal, with their in-house legal as well.
Nice.
I think anything to make this interpretation easier is definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
No, that would be
Okay. Anything else? Okay. And we are going to table the Jake break ordinance discussion unless Nate has anything that he'd like to speak about. But no. Okay. Moving on to the city manager update.
Just have a couple of items to update council on. Last week, Patrick Wing from Marquette Associates, which is the investment manager for all three city pension funds, met with members of all three pension boards to review the performance of the plans. Although Marquette hasn't been in that position for very long, beginning of April for the fire pension and the non-uniform pension plans, and the beginning of May for the police pension plans. When you consider the reduction in expenses that they've been able to achieve, along with some broader market trends, wouldn't want to just kind of say it was all about what they did, because it wasn't. But Mr. Wing estimated that the annual rate of return they're seeing right now in relation to the year 2021 should be something in excess of 11%. Just another quick item I have is that we're working to finalize the 2022 to 2026 capital improvement program. We're gonna forward that to council in advance of our next meeting, which is on November 8th. And hopefully you'll pass that by resolution at that time. The first year of that program will be actually in the budget as the capital budget for 2022. Just wanted to point that out to you. You can anticipate that to be coming your way in about a week or so. And we'll be discussing it at the meeting on the 8th. That's all I have.
Thank you, Omar. Moving on to council discussion. Councilman Kelly?
Yes, wanted to just offer a little more discussion. You know, at the last meeting, I had raised the issue of what was once described as the Kettle Street interchange for I-99 and the fact that there will probably be some kind of infrastructure money coming from the federal government. And, you know, certainly I think another interchange on I-99, if not Kettle Street, that northern part of the city or better access to Juniata and into Logan Township, I think is certainly worth looking at. As the county planner used to always say, Kettle Street was deferred but not deleted. And I think that it'd be good if we went on record by letting the PennDOT district engineer know that we're interested in talking about that interchange. And I think it would be good then if we copied our federal and state legislators as well as the Blair County commissioners on that. Because I don't know when the next MPO meeting is.
January or something?
Yeah,
February?
December or January. Yeah.
Okay. And I think it would be good to reach out to them and, you know, say that we have some interest in discussing this and revisiting it.
Well, I think, are you, the transportation money, do you see that coming to the same way as the American Rescue Plan did? Is that why? Because I don't think I don't think the infrastructure bill is gonna work that way. It'll go to the states, and then the states will have the discretion and how it gets
And that's,
passed down or
yeah,
spent.
I mean, but it probably will come through PennDOT as one of the agencies looking at that. My concern is that if we don't have something ready to go, that money will go somewhere else. And I'm thinking of something that would help create some economic development in and around the Altoona area, both commercial and residential even. And also, another interchange would certainly alleviate some of the traffic and problems we have with 17th Street, which continues to get more and more traffic on it. So I'd like to be on record on trying to move the ball forward so that we can have some appropriate discussion on it. I don't know, you know, if at that time, because, you know, I'm stretching my memory, you know, if they actually had designs for that interchange at Kettle Street or if they looked at any other place on that I-99 section, but certainly they always talked about the Kettle Street interchange. So I think we at least need to get that discussion going with PennDOT.
So we'll find out when the next MPO meeting is. We'll put together some, you know, documentation that we would like to see that happen in the city and notify
I
the
think if nothing else, Omar, it's worth saying that we'd like to revisit the topic, and that with the possibility of a federal infrastructure bill, monies may become available to move forward with that project that didn't happen years ago. So, like I said, if we're not moving forward with something, that money will come. You know, just look how quickly the ARP money came. So I would hate to see us miss out on an opportunity if there's going to be federal funds that come available. Because somebody else will be ready to go. They'll have something on the shelf, they'll dust it off, and they'll be ready to go.
We'll dig into it, find out what we can about the history of it, what's available, and what information is available. because I would think we would have to re-educate the folks that we're trying to convince.
There's a lot of new faces,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, since that was discussed. And some of our current members of council were probably in elementary school when that was being discussed, so, I mean, it's quite a ways back, so, but I think it's certainly worth discussing.
okay.
I'm sure somebody has old preliminary plans somewhere.
You know, old blueprints don't die, do they,
Yeah.
Dave? They sit around in those blueprint drawers, don't they?
Yep.
Councilman Carper,
I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Buttermilk.
Yeah, we were able to attend the GADEC meeting a little earlier today, and one of the things Pat Miller mentioned was about the Christmas parade, and they are limiting that to 100 units this year. And so one of the things he happened to mention was a lot of people wait till the last minute to get signed up, and so he gave us a list of the people signed up already, and there's a number of churches and organizations signed up already. But if you are interested in getting involved in having a float or having your organization in the parade, make sure you sign up sooner rather than later so you can get in there before the cutoff point.
Yeah, I think there's already 44 registrations for the parade, so they're
Yeah.
already almost halfway there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Nikas,
Nothing at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
you're welcome. Bill.
Thank you. Is there any update, I guess from any update on McCrory's at this point?
Nothing, no new update at this
Okay.
time, no.
Could I get a I wasn't, there were a few items on the ARPA list that you didn't mention, funding amounts for. Could I get a copy of that, paper that you were reading from?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Does the amount, do the amounts that are listed in that proposal that you went over today cover all 39.5 million of the,
Yes.
okay,
Bill, just to remind you, that is just a guide.
right, I
Like
understand.
that's,
Yeah.
it's going to change in some way, shape, or form.
Right, I understand. And is it clear on that paper how much is intended for 2021?
Yes.
Okay. Tom, regarding the student housing issue, why would, I guess I don't understand the label of spot zoning for that matter that you were reluctant to do, to change.
Well, the way the zoning code's currently written, it basically designates various areas of the city as in certain types of zone,
Mhm.
okay? And it lists, okay, these are the types of, homes or business or whatever that can be located in these areas. It also then has special exceptions.
Mm.
And with student homes, they're listed as a special exception
Right,
in each one of these areas, among several other special exceptions. And all the special exceptions are treated equally and the same. And it's just a concern. I'm not saying if it was challenged, it would get thrown out on the spot zoning, but that's a concern. And it's basically you're giving specialized treatment to one exception over another. So as the code's currently written, I think that's a legitimate concern, and trying to avoid the consequence of, or of unintended consequences, so to speak.
Right.
So, yeah.
okay. So basically, it's a fair treatment, equitable treatment kind of
Exactly,
issue. sort of.
exactly.
Okay. What about what Rebecca said? Is there another way that it could be handled in the zoning law other than special exception that would get around the
Yeah,
problem?
I mean, what some places do is they can have their own separate student housing ordinance. I'll just say our current zoning code is not written that way. So-
Would that be a,
I guess at, at that point, you're gonna probably do a little more of a significant overhaul of the existing ordinance to basically pull the student home designation and everything related to it out of the existing ordinance and then existing code and basically create its own separate section.
but is that theoretically possible?
It's a theoretical possibility, yes. But then there are also, some of the hurdles you gotta address as you go through that as well, so.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, and I guess this is for Matt, maybe. What's gonna happen with the student housing ordinance right now? Like, are you gonna wait till December or what?
Yeah, we're just waiting to gather more information on it, speak to more people about it. We want to make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to hurt anybody with it.
Right, okay, I'm done, thanks.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.